Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a leaked report from UN experts accuses Rwanda's army of running military operations against the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda has long denied Kinshasa's accusation that it supports M23 rebels. Also, Somalia begins bringing home troops it says were training in Eritrea. The murky circumstances around the troops' recruitment sparked protests and accusations that they'd been held against their will. And education organisations say that a third of school-aged children in Sudan do not go to school. Meanwhile, tens of millions of others, caught between conflict, economic crises and the pandemic, have had their education disrupted in some way. But first, a leaked report from UN experts accuses Rwanda's army of running military operations against the Democratic Republic of Congo. Investigators found substantial evidence of Rwanda's military fighting alongside M23 rebels in DR Congo's east, some in operations against Congolese positions. Now, Rwanda's long denied Kinshasa's accusations that it supports the M23. The document laying out the UN experts' findings is due to be published over the coming days. Now, the M23 has won several victories against the Congolese army as it advances across Rutshuru. They've drawn ever closer to the provincial capital of Goma, which they briefly seized a decade ago. Our correspondents have spoken to residents there who fear the M23's return.
A sense of foreboding hangs over Goma. The commercial hub of eastern DRC is again facing the threat of M23 rebels, who are now within several dozen kilometers of the city. Saeed is haunted by memories of 2012. He still has the piece of shrapnel that struck him, and his body bears the scars.
Look at this hole. This is where the bomb fell. This is the debris that hurt me. My arm, my leg, my whole body. I have terrible pain. Some days I can't even walk. When I learned that M23 was advancing on Goma again, I was scared.
For residents of Goma, the resurgence of M23 hasn't exactly come as a surprise. This researcher explains that both the Congolese army and the 16,000 UN peacekeepers deployed across the country underestimated the rebels. The group was defeated in a 2013 counteroffensive, but M23 merely retreated to neighboring Uganda and Rwanda. An exile that gave them time and space to rearm and re-strategize.
When they occupied this part of the territory in the Virunga National Park, surrounded by volcanoes in the middle of nowhere, on 3 borders, everyone could see them, but everyone believed they weren't dangerous. Because they were only a dozen kilometers away from major Congolese army positions like Bunagana. But no one attacked them, because we thought they'd die of cold.
Daily life in Goma is now set to the rhythm of military patrols. A first group of Kenyan soldiers has arrived to help as part of a regional force. But many criticize the presence of a foreign military. They ask why no counteroffensive has been launched to push back the M23 rebels before they ever reach the city.
Well, Somalia has begun repatriating troops it said it sent for training in neighbouring Eritrea after protests erupted across several cities in the country over accusations that the troops had been recruited under false pretences and had been held captives. Months later, a Somali intelligence agent investigating the case was killed. Our Caroline Lambole tells us more about the murky circumstances of the troops' recruitment.
The announcement will come as a relief for many. On Tuesday, the Somali defense minister addressed the fate of the men who were reportedly sent for training in Eritrea.
Today, I would like to share some good news with you that is important for the Somali people, and which also marks a meaningful step in the fight against al-Shabaab. The first batch of Somali soldiers trained in Eritrea have returned to the country. The remaining soldiers will come back in the coming days. They will be part of the fight against al-Shabaab.
He gave no further details or numbers. The troops' presence in Eritrea is still shrouded in mystery. Some family members have said the men were recruited to work in Qatar, but had then surfaced in Eritrea, where they were forced to serve in the military. There are reports that some were sent to fight in Tigray in Ethiopia, which lies just across the border to the south. Following months of protests and silence from his predecessor, President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, who was freshly elected, traveled to Eritrea in July and then again in November. There he met with the troops. Over the summer, a government spokesperson broke the silence over what he dismissed as rumors.
There are 5,000 soldiers who were missing and have now been found. The former government did not communicate about those soldiers, and so people just circulated rumors. The process to bring them back home is ongoing.
The president said Monday that bringing all the soldiers home would take until January.
Look now at some news in brief. The verdict in the trial of the suspect in one of Ivory Coast's worst extremist attacks has been pushed back by a week. 4 suspects appeared in court in the country this week, and another 14 are being tried in absentia over the 2016 machine gun raid in Grand Bassam, in which 19 people were killed. Al-Qaeda's North African affiliate, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, claimed responsibility for the attack. A verdict had initially been expected on Thursday. Now, an Ivorian delegation led by the country's defense minister headed to Mali on Thursday for negotiations over the detention of dozens of Ivorian soldiers. The diplomatic dispute was first sparked in July when 49 Ivorian soldiers were arrested upon arrival at Bamako airport. Now, Ivory Coast and the UN said that the troops were there as part of a peacekeeping mission. Bamako accuses them of being mercenaries. Earlier this month, regional bloc ECOWAS set a New Year's deadline for their release, after which new sanctions would be imposed on Mali. Almost all of the armed groups that signed a major peace agreement in Mali in 2015 suspended their participation in the deal on Thursday. The coordination of the Azawad Movement, or CMA, fought the state for years before settling on the deal, but now say that the ruling junta lacks the political will to uphold it. The groups have issued a joint statement saying that the suspension would last until international mediation is arranged on neutral ground. Mali's had a turbulent few years with 2 military coups over 2020 and 2021. The ruling junta has adopted a transitional timetable to return to civilian rule in March 2024. Now, international education organizations say that a third of school-aged children in Sudan don't go to school. Conflict, economic crises, and the pandemic has meant that tens of millions of children have had their education disrupted in some way. All that has just been compounded by a nationwide shortage of teachers. Our team tells us more.
None of Sarah's 3 school-age children actually go to school. Even at government-funded institutions, enrollment costs €165 per child. That's out of reach for many Sudanese families.
I want my kids to learn in the future, but I can't work because my child is too young. I'll start again when he's 1.
7 million children in Sudan are deprived of an education. Sarah recently turned to this UNICEF-funded school. It's free to attend, but her kids will have to wait. It's struggling to keep up with growing demand and only has basic facilities.
When we come to the school, the electricity is cut off. The students have it in the morning, but we don't have it in the afternoon. My class has 60 students, and today a lot of them are absent. It was the teachers who brought more benches for the students to sit on, but we always have new arrivals and new registrations.
On top of those difficult working conditions, teachers say their pay has gotten worse due to inflation and their salaries are often paid late, making the profession unattractive. Throughout December, teachers have gone on strike repeatedly to demand for higher wages. This school is short of 4 full-time members of staff, a shortfall they cannot afford given that many of their students have years of catching up to do.
They come from different communities, and there are big differences in school levels at the same age. There are students who have never been to kindergarten or primary school, or who have never been to school.
Teachers want Khartoum to do more to avoid failing a generation of Sudanese school children whose schooling had already been impacted by the military coup last year and the enforced school closures during the coronavirus pandemic.
The government need to keep schools open and reopen those schools that aren't open now. They need to pay teachers, and we need urgent investments in education and transformational education in Sudan, both for quality of education and for access to education.
The situation is dire, with nearly 70% of 10-year-olds in Sudan unable to read.
A Tunisian photographer has been documenting his discoveries as he explores his city of Tunis in a blog. Lost in Tunis recounts Mourad Ben Sheikh Ahmed's intimate understanding of the hidden richness of the Tunisian capital as he wanders through the ruins, monuments and secret places.
I hope my act of documenting and highlighting the city will make a modest, positive impact. If, after seeing my photographs, some people start to open their eyes and look around and be a little more curious, I think I will have succeeded in my little mission. The Medina is very interesting historically and architecturally. It's stood here for more than 1,000 years. It's been the backdrop of many dynasties and major events. Even if some places look run down, when you do a little digging, you find all sorts of interesting things about them, like a famous person lived here or an historic event happened there.
Well, that's it for Eye in Africa. Thanks for joining us. Take care.